considering this history of changing mind, every time a truce is announced or a ceasefire, and every time Ukraine agrees to that, only because at this specific moment Ukraine finds itself cornered on a battlefield, and the moment there is a pause in hostilities, it takes them 2 weeks or a month to violate the ceasefire. This has always been the case. This time, we need very clear working guarantees.
This is my video update on this Tuesday afternoon, March the 25th, coming to you from Nicosia, Cyprus. Let's talk about some news. And let's talk about the U.S.-Russia negotiations in Saudi Arabia, which wrapped up yesterday. Those talks lasted for 12 hours. We do not know the outcome. We do not know what was agreed on, what was disagreed, and we probably will not find out because Peskov, he came out with a statement and said that there will most likely not be any announcements on the technical talks that took place in Saudi Arabia. 12 hours. Compare that to the talks between the U.S. and Ukraine, which happened 2 days ago. Those talks lasted for 40 minutes. And actually, the U.S. also sat down today with Ukraine. And those talks also lasted for about 30 minutes to an hour. That's it. In total, the U.S. and Ukraine probably sat down over 2 days. They sat down for a total of maybe 1.5 to 2 hours max, compared to 1 day of talks between the United States and Russia, which was 12 hours. That tells you that the real negotiations are taking place between the United States and Russia, because this is a proxy war between the United States and Russia, with Ukraine as the proxy. And the United States, they sat down with the proxy a day before their talks with Russia, and they sat down with the proxy a day after their talks with Russia. And what they're doing with Ukraine is that they're basically just giving Ukraine orders. That's all they are doing. They're dictating terms to Ukraine, and they're telling the Ukraine delegation, what do you guys think? Take this back to Kiev, call up Kiev, and let us know what you think about the agreements that we're discussing with Russia. And there are reports which claim, and these are still rumors, but there are rumors that claim that the United States was okay with the June 2024 Istanbul Plus territory terms from Russia, which call on the Ukraine military to leave the 4 oblasts in their entirety. And when they relayed this back to the Ukraine delegation said, no way. They said, no chance, no way are we going to agree to this. And that was the end of the talks today between the United States and Ukraine. So if you're the Biden administration, if you're the Trump administration, you have 2 options in trying to resolve this conflict. Option number 1 is that you figure out a way to deal with Zelensky, because obviously the Zelensky regime is not going to agree to the Russian terms. The United States appears ready to agree to the Russian terms in order to wind this war down, but the Zelensky regime is not agreeing to the Russian terms. Istanbul Plus root causes 2024, and so you're going to have to figure out a way to deal with the Zelensky regime. Maybe get elections going, call elections tomorrow. I don't know, maybe figure out some sort of some sort of exit for the Green Goblin, call up Victoria Nuland and fly her to Kiev so she can pass out cookies and cake and get a new government in place in Kiev. I don't know. But the United States, they're experts at regime change, so they got to figure out a way to get a new government in place in Ukraine, a government that's going to green light the Istanbul plus June 2024 Russian terms. That's one way that you resolve the conflict, that you resolve the impasse, the negotiation impasse, and the territory issue. The other thing that you do is you just put Ukraine to the side. You negotiate Project Ukraine, but you negotiate it slowly. You take your time and you try to figure things out. Maybe it'll take 3 months, maybe it'll take 6 months, 9 months, I don't know. But you put that to the side and you normalize relations with Russia over the next couple of weeks, and you leave it there. Option number 3 is to escalate. But why would you do that? Can you do that if you're the Trump administration? You escalate in Ukraine, that means more weapons, which you don't have. That means money, which is going to really piss off the America First Trump supporter, sending more money to the Green Goblin. That's going to infuriate people in the United States. And why would you escalate knowing that you're going to lose the conflict? And eventually when Russia wins the military conflict, it's not going to be Biden that's going to be blamed for the loss of the war. It's going to be the Trump administration that's going to be blamed for the loss of the war, because you're the administration that decided to continue escalation. So option number 3 is a no-go. So you have either option number 1 or option number 2. Either put Ukraine to the side and normalize relations with Russia, because you have all kinds of other issues and topics that you need to discuss with Russia, so just move forward with that. Or figure out a way to get elections going in Ukraine, or to get a government that you can work with in Kiev. I can't think of anything else for the Trump administration. Lavrov gave an interview to Russian media, to Channel 1 of Russian media. And Lavrov didn't give any details on the negotiations that took place in Saudi Arabia between the US and Russia. But listening to Lavrov, I took away that Russia is not going to fall for any kind of Minsk III. They're not going to give an inch to the Trump administration. The minimum terms that Russia is going to hold firm on is Istanbul plus June 2024 root causes. That's the minimum that Russia's going to demand. And if Russia continues to advance on the front lines, all of that can change. The terms can get a lot worse for the Zelensky regime and ultimately for the Trump administration. So that is the update there. And we might be getting an announcement on some sort of a Black Sea ceasefire, which is just a rerun of the grain deal that we had 2 years ago in the Black Sea, because Lavrov did mention that Russia would be okay with a Black Sea ceasefire, and he said that this was like the grain deal that was agreed on 2 years ago. But Lavrov said to Channel 1 of Russia, he said 2 years ago during that grain deal, Russia lived up to its end of the bargain, but Ukraine broke that grain deal. The Collective West broke that grain deal. All kinds of weapons were flowing into the Odessa port. I remember covering the grain deal. All kinds of weapons were getting into Odessa. Turkey, which mediated that deal along with the UN, they did not inspect the ships properly. They allowed weapons to flow into Odessa, and even the UN was not impartial. And Lavrov mentioned it in his interview. The UN, Guterres, going against the UN Charter, he actually sided with the Biden administration and with the Collective West, and they were looking at loopholes to bypass the grain deal and to screw Russia over on that deal. So Lavrov was saying, look, we went through this 2 years ago. We're okay to try this again, but it's going to have to be our way, and we're going to have to get assurances that Ukraine, the collective West, that they don't sabotage the Black Sea ceasefire like they sabotaged the grain deal 2 years ago. And why would Russia believe that Ukraine is not going to sabotage some sort of Black Sea ceasefire when they're already breaking the 30-day energy infrastructure ceasefire? I think we've had the ceasefire on energy infrastructure for 5 days, 6 days, and Ukraine has already broken that ceasefire 3 or 4 times. Yesterday, they went after the Caspian Pipeline Consortium, which is a consortium of Russia, Kazakhstan, and U.S. companies. ExxonMobil and Chevron are part of this consortium. And the Ukraine military attacked this pipeline, an attack on energy infrastructure. So they violated the 30-day energy ceasefire again yesterday, involving U.S. companies this time. And the U.S. companies actually called out the Ukraine military and the Zelensky regime for attacking the CPC pipeline. So why should Russia believe that Ukraine would abide by a Black Sea ceasefire when they can't even get through 1 week of complying with the 30-day energy infrastructure ceasefire? But Putin is showing great patience, incredible patience with the Trump administration. The Trump administration is not reining in the Zelensky regime. So far, the Trump administration has not called out the Zelensky regime for violating the 30-day energy infrastructure ceasefire. But what Russia has said is that they are not going to retaliate against Ukraine, at least not yet. They've sent out a warning that if Ukraine continues to hit Russia's energy infrastructure, then they reserve the right to symmetrically hit Ukrainian energy infrastructure. But Peskov said yesterday that Putin has not given any orders to go after Ukraine's energy infrastructure, and the Russians are honoring the energy strike truce despite Ukraine's violations. Putin has a lot of patience, man. He has a lot of patience. He wants to normalize relations with the United States. Much bigger than Ukraine. Ukraine's very important. It's a very important problem, conflict that needs to be solved between the United States and Russia. But Putin wants a bigger normalization of ties between the United States and Russia. So that covers the Saudi Arabia talks. And yesterday we had Time magazine publish an article, an interview, actually, with the Green Goblin, with Elensky. And the cover of Time was Zelensky and the words "The Endgame" across the cover, across Zelensky's chest. The End Game. That is the title that Time is going with. The full title of the article is exclusive. Zelensky on Trump, Putin, and the End Game in Ukraine. Interesting title for Time, huh? Zelensky, End Game. You think Zelensky understands what's going on yet? I don't think he quite understands what's going on. End game. End game, Podolyak. I don't understand. Why they have photo of me and they say the end game? What are they trying to tell me, Podolyak? Oh, man. Time interviewed Zelensky about 2 years ago. I remember covering that interview. I was in Bulgaria at the time. and Time got special access to the Zelensky regime, and they were allowed to speak to officials in his government. And the article came to the conclusion, this was 2 years ago, the article came to the conclusion that everyone in Zelensky's government, his high-level officials, think that the guy's crazy. They said he has a messiah, God complex, and they think the guy's wacko. I remember covering that article. And so here you have Time, once again, in Kiev. This time they're going to the man himself, Elensky, and they're interviewing Elensky. And my takeaway from this interview, reading this interview and looking at the various photos of Elensky, the one photo in particular where he's standing in front of two paintings, I'll get to that in a bit, is that Elensky's, he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, man. Yeah, the guy's crazy. He's lost it. He's delusional. Absolutely. Oh, boy. So Elensky in this interview with Time, he complains that the Kremlin, they're feeding misinformation to the Trump administration, and they're basically convincing the Trump administration, according to Elensky, that Ukraine does not want peace. They do not want the war to end. This is Zelensky's. This was his big complaint to Time. 1 second. Zelensky claims Russia has influenced U.S. officials. I believe Russia has managed to influence some people on the White House team through information, Zelensky told the magazine. Their signal to the Americans was that the Ukrainians do not want to end the war, and something should be done to force them. So he's saying that the Kremlin is influencing the Trump administration and telling the Trump administration that the Ukrainians do not want to end the war. That's a direct quote from Zelensky. The Ukrainians do not want to end the war. This is Kremlin influence over the Trump administration. And Zelensky's telling this to Time as he is standing, in front of one painting with the Kremlin on fire and another painting with Ukraine troops fighting the Russian military inside of Russia. And there's a third painting, which is not in the photo, of a ship, a Russian ship in the Black Sea sinking, on fire or sinking, something like that. So he's got these pictures of the Kremlin burning as he's standing in front of these pictures of the Kremlin burning as he's telling Time magazine that the Kremlin is telling the Trump administration that Ukraine does not want the war to end. Why would the Trump administration think that Ukraine does not want the war to end? What could it be that is tipping off the Trump administration, the entire world, to think that Ukraine does not want the war to end? Could it be that you're standing in front of photos of the Kremlin burning and of the Ukraine military fighting the Russian military in Russia and Russian ships sinking? Could that be an indication that maybe you don't want the war to end? Maybe you're not so hot on peace, Elensky. I mean, just saying. I don't know. Anyway, that is the interview that he gave with Time. He said that he chose those paintings. I'm not going to call it artwork because I don't consider it artwork, but he said that he chose those paintings because they symbolize victory. That is what Zelensky said. Those paintings symbolize victory, a victory that is never going to happen. You want to place a bet that Zelensky hung those pictures in his office a day before the Time reporter arrived in Kiev, so he could give some sort of message to the Banderites and to the Europeans, so he can show that he's tough and he's ready to continue to escalate and to fight the conflict, that this is more of a message to the Banderites and the Europeans than it is anything else. Anyway, Zelensky's office, like a psych ward, according to Moscow. The photo of Elensky standing beside the paintings was reportedly taken as he gave Time correspondent Simon Schuster a tour of his office one evening earlier in March. The report also mentioned a third painting showing a Russian warship sinking in the Black Sea that was not visible in the photo. Time said Elensky selected the painting himself and that they now hang in a small room behind his main office. Asked by TASS to comment on the images, Zakharova replied simply, a psych ward, without further elaboration. Her view was echoed by Vladimir Zabarov, deputy head of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Russia's upper chamber, the Federation Council. He said the painting of the burning Kremlin in Zelensky's office pointed to the latter's limited mental capacity. The man is sick in the head, Zabarov told Lenta.ru on Monday. Would it occur to a normal person to hang such paintings? He made his dreams come true, apparently, the dreams of all Ukrainian neo-Nazis, he said. He does have a point, Zabarov. He has a point. What normal person would have those paintings in his office or in his home? I mean, what normal person would actually hang stuff like that up in his office or his home? Only the Green Goblin, folks, only the Green Goblin would hang up stuff like that. So that's the Time interview, the memes that are coming out with this photo of Elensky standing in front of the paintings. Pretty funny memes. I can't show you a lot of the memes because a lot of them are showing Elensky playing piano. You know what I mean. Some of the memes show Macron in a swimsuit in one of the paintings, so I won't put that up either. But let me look for some of the memes which I can put on this video, and you'll see what I mean with all the memes coming out of Elensky standing in front of these two pictures. The Elensky regime, by the way, they want Witkoff sacked. They want Witkoff gone because Witkoff told Tucker Carlson that he thinks Putin is smart, which Tucker agreed. Putin is smart. That's what Tucker said. I think Tucker said super smart, but he said that he liked Putin as well. And this is pissing off the Zelensky regime. And now they're demanding that Trump fire Witkoff. Yeah, good luck with that. Kiev wants Trump envoy sacked. A key Ukrainian foreign affairs official has lashed out at Steve Witkoff for spreading Russian propaganda. Yeah, this was expected. I think we all knew that the minute Witkoff said Putin is smart, the minute Tucker agreed with Witkoff and said, yeah, Putin is smart, that the Europeans and 008 Stammer and Elensky, that they would flip out. This was expected. So China, they came out with a statement denying the reports from the German publication Welt. The German publication, last week, they reported that China is on board with Macron and 008 Stammer to send peacekeepers into Ukraine if a ceasefire agreement is reached between the United States and Russia. That is what Welt was reporting. And China came out with a statement and they rejected involvement in Ukraine peacekeeping contingent. Media speculation on the issue is entirely wrong, the foreign ministry has said. So that's the update there. And shifting gears, we turn to the Middle East, and the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Israel is readying a new Gaza invasion. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's team is reportedly aiming to defeat Hamas by taking control over large territories of the Palestinian enclave. This is what the Wall Street Journal is reporting, which would be a disaster for the Middle East. It would be a disaster for the Trump administration. It would risk a disastrous wider war in the Middle East that could pull in the United States, pull in Iran, but and a lot of other countries could get pulled into a conflict, especially given what's happening now in Yemen and the escalation that's already happening towards Iran. I'll get to that in a minute with my clown world, because my clown world is going to talk about the Signal Houthi messaging group that was created and was leaked to The Atlantic. But we are getting reports, sticking with Gaza, from Israeli media, and this is coming from Israeli media. Many sources in Israel are reporting that Egypt pushes a deal to release 5 living hostages for ceasefire aid to Gaza. Hamas responds positively to Egyptian proposals. Official says Cairo would reportedly require Hamas to provide detailed information on conditions of all hostages, including those alive, deceased, or wounded, along with photographic evidence. The report also claims that the United States and Witkoff are on board with this initiative from Egypt. The reports are that Hamas is looking at this favorably, but I believe the report, at least at the time of this recording, said that Israel has not received any concrete proposals yet from Egypt concerning this hostage release, or the information on the 5 hostages that could be released and which could get the parties back on track for phase 2 of the ceasefire. We're going to wait and see what happens with this developing story out of Egypt. So let's segue into the Signal group chat that made its way to The Atlantic, the neocon publication, The Atlantic. This is without a doubt my clown world, though this is a very serious development. But what can you say? When you have a Signal, the Signal messaging app, when you are part of the White House, a very high level, the highest level officials in the White House, and you create a chat group on Signal discussing the attack on Yemen, and you call this group Houthi PC Small Group, that is the name of the group, well, that is clown world territory, no doubt about it. So the article in The Atlantic is, the Trump administration accidentally texted me its war plans. U.S. national security leaders included me in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. I didn't think it could be real. Then the bombs started falling, by Jeffrey Goldberg, who is the editor of the neocon Atlantic, which is super duper uber neocon. Absolutely hates Trump, by the way, The Atlantic. And the story goes that Mike Waltz, he added Goldberg to this group. He created this chat group, and he added Goldberg, the editor of The Atlantic, into this group. Now, I don't know if he added Goldberg intentionally or if it was by accident, but we do have some DC insiders, reporters in DC, who claim that Mike Waltz was leaking information to The Atlantic. I can't confirm this, but this is what some reporters are coming out with. So maybe Mike Waltz wanted to add Goldberg to this group. Maybe it was by accident. I hope we have an investigation, and I hope we find out what's going on here. Let me read you. I'm going to do a lot of reading for this clown world, but let me read you a post on X from Tony Kinnett. I've read the Atlantic article and Signal messages twice, top to bottom. Most of those on social media ringing alarm bells and repeating talking points have not. Should Goldberg have been added to the chat? No. Did Goldberg gain access to secret information? Kind of. He found out we'd strike the Houthis 2 hours early. What Goldberg and the Atlantic are calling top secret war plans is a massive embellishment. Any butter bar fresh out of ROTC could tell you that. These aren't war plans. These aren't even school board notes. They're okay. We're ready to do that thing everyone knew we were going to do. Yep, neat. Also, Europe sucks. Watergate, this is not. It's a final informal check-in after things are already planned and assigned. I kind of agree with his take. I don't think anything secret was talked about in this chat. Nothing that we didn't already know, that the whole world didn't effectively already know, which was that the U.S. is attacking Yemen, or was about to attack Yemen, and they did attack Yemen, from what I understand, a couple of hours after all of these guys were chatting. By the way, it was Mike Waltz, J.D. Vance, Pete Hegseth, I believe. Trump's chief of staff, Wiles, was also included in this. Ratcliffe was also in this group. And a couple of more people. I believe Witkoff was also in this group. But yeah, I don't think there was anything super secret that was talked about in this group. But man, this is such a bad look. This is a really bad look. And yeah, it is a breach of security, given that this is coming from the NSA guy, the National Security Advisor, that he decided to have this type of conversation on Signal is kind of damning. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating for the Trump administration. By the way, this has been confirmed, kind of confirmed by the Trump administration. So there were reports saying that maybe this is some sort of intentional leak. Maybe they're trying to expose the Atlantic, or something is going on. Some sort of trap was being set, and that's why this was leaked. No, it looks like this was just a big F up, a huge, massive F up. Let me read you what the Financial Times is saying about this. Top U.S. officials shared classified details of military strikes with journalists. The apparent security breach came after Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, was added to the chat by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz ahead of last week's attacks on Yemen-based Houthi rebels after they threatened to resume attacks on shipping in the Red Sea. The veracity of the chat was confirmed by the National Security Council. At this time, the message thread that was reported appears to be authentic, and we are reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain, said NSC spokesman Brian Hughes. Why in God's name are you guys chatting on Signal to begin with? I mean, that right there is clown world. That right there is freaking clown world. You're telling me the U.S. government, the White House, the CIA, whatever, the FBI, they don't have their own private, super duper, uber secure messaging app? Come on, man. Oh my God. According to Goldberg, Vance suggested the threat from the Houthis was more of a European issue, as only a small fraction of U.S. trade ran through the Suez Canal. He expressed concern that the U.S. attack was a mistake that risked a spike in oil prices while bailing Europe out. A number of members of the group suggested Europe could be asked to compensate the U.S. for the strikes. Waltz said he was working with government departments to determine how to compile the cost associated and levy them on the Europeans. Another contributor, who appeared to be Trump's Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, suggested if the U.S. successfully restores freedom of navigation at great cost, there needs to be some further economic gain extracted in return. Hegseth, a former Fox News host, wrote that he shared the vice president's loathing of European freeloading. So I think two big takeaways from this leak, this mess up, whatever you want to call it, aside from Goldberg, The Atlantic, Mike Waltz, and all of that stuff, is that J.D. Vance was not so hot on the idea of attacking Yemen. He did not like it. He argued that through the Red Sea, only 3% of U.S. trade or U.S. ships pass through the Red Sea. The rest are European, or 40%, or some number like that. 40% of cargo is European. So really, the United States is bailing out Europe. And he said that this is not beneficial for the United States. And then other people said, okay, let's extract some money from the Europeans. Vance did not like the idea of attacking Yemen. He does not like the European political class. He feels like they're a bunch of freeloaders, and Hegseth agrees with him. Hegseth also loathes the European political class. So that was an interesting take. Vance, he's not hot on these conflicts. He doesn't like them. In the messages, he even talked about this conflict leading to a spike in the oil price, and that's not going to help America. He said that as well. But he also said that he doesn't agree, but he'll go with the consensus. So that was interesting. That was an interesting part to this group chat. Politico has an article with the title, "Waltz's Future in Doubt Following Accidental War Plan Leak." Two of the officials said that while Trump may lay blame at the feet of Waltz for potentially compromising U.S. national security, he could just as easily be frustrated with Vance for stepping out of line from the administration's foreign policy in the chat, or target Hegseth as the one who allegedly shared sensitive details with the group. It was reckless not to check who was on the thread. It was reckless to be having that conversation on Signal. You can't have recklessness as the national security advisor. An official interviewed by Politico said, a person close to the White House was even more blunt. Everyone in the White House can agree on one thing. Mike Waltz is an effing idiot. So it looks like neocon Mike Waltz, if I had to take a guess, and this is just a guess, let's say this wasn't a mistake, that he added Goldberg to this Signal chat group. I can't believe what I'm saying. A chat group on Signal coming from the White House. Anyway, let's say it wasn't a mistake. Then it means that Mike Waltz was up to some no good. I don't know how else to describe it. Maybe the Atlantic being a neocon publication, Mike Waltz being neocon. Maybe there's something there. I don't know. If I had to take a guess, and this wasn't an accident, and this was deliberate, that would be my guess. But this could have been an accident. Either way, we're going to need an investigation, or as Politico is reporting, Mike Waltz could be on his way out. That's also possible. Anyway, that's the clown world, everybody. What a freaking clown world that is. Amazing. Putin's DNA cracked, according to Bild. Putin's DNA cracked. Let's see what it says here. The Kremlin dictator keeps his genetic origin secret, has his feces collected himself. Everything was in vain. What? This is coming from a Google translation, right? But come on, man. Bild. Does it get any worse than Bild? Can it get any worse than reporting from the German publication Bild? Oh boy. Anyway, that's the video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and X. Go to the Duran shop, pick up some merch like what I'm wearing in this video update. There is a link to the Duran shop in the description box down below, and we also have a 15% special running for spring, so check that out as well. Take care.